Imagine if John Wick was an immortal and he thought that everybody throughout time had killed his dog. That's this comic. I hope I don't blind you with the light reflecting off this foil cover. I feel like I'm accidentally going to summon Keanu Reeves out of the sky with this searchlight. So this is the newest addition to the BRZRKR storyline. It's a one-shot, it's a totally self-contained issue, but it's furthering the long history that BRZRKR has. The character was co-created by Keanu Reeves, and I think it's with the intention of him playing the character in a movie eventually, which I would like to see. But for this issue, we have Mattson Tomlin writing it, and you can tell that Mattson Tomlin is a huge comic nerd. He's normally a screenwriter, but this comic is written with so much love for the medium. It's really impressive, really. And it's illustrated by Rebekah Isaacs, who's done a couple creator-owned, kind of smaller title series, but she's also done work for Marvel. And looking at the art, it looks kind of like Carlos Pacheco art, but not quite that stylized, not quite that clean. But it's still really good art. It's super easy to look at, and I like this art a lot better than Ron Garney's art. I'm just not a huge fan of Ron Garney's work lately. He's a lot like John Romita Jr., where he started out doing pretty well, and then he got so far into his style and he stopped prioritizing the important details, and he's just throwing in random lines here and there to show texture, but it doesn't feel textured. But Ron Garney's older art was pretty good, and actually he drew my favorite issue of Amazing Spider-Man, issue 537, which has the best Captain America moment I've ever read. It happens right in the middle of Civil War, and it's absolutely worth reading. Fantastic Four was a great series during Civil War. Spider-Man was a great series during Civil War. It was really a high point for writing in the Marvel Universe. Anyway, I like that we have Rebekah Isaacs on BRZRKR now instead of Ron Garney. And the first thing I noticed once I opened it up is that there's no splash page. I haven't always needed a splash page, and I know that that's kind of a basic Marvel fanboy thing to want, but especially after reading Saga by Vaughn and Staples, I just really want those giant, weird splash pages that hook you in. I just really want that. It does work out in BRZRKR because on page 4 we get this super awesome splash page. And I skimmed over it the first time I saw it because the colors weren't all that striking. But looking back at it, if you look closer, the architecture on this building is so thought out and so well done. It looks like a Lord of the Rings castle. It's really great world building just in this one panel. So there, I got my splash page. And even before that splash page, the intro, like the writing for this intro, those first 3 pages, is really interesting. Great world building, great characters they're introducing. You've got a lot of questions, but you know they're going to be answered. And then we start getting into the main story, and I get a little bit nervous because this story is taking place during, like, Bible times. And when I was growing up, one of the first comics that I had was the Action Bible. Okay, and if you haven't read the Action Bible, it's not good. Say you love comics and you don't really like the Bible and you want to read a comic about the Bible so you can learn to like the Bible, well, Action Comics is not that comic. It's just not good. And the whole aesthetic in the Action Bible just turned me off to this whole era of art. So anytime a comic has like Bible era clothing and settings and it's set out in the desert, I'm just not into it. The Action Bible ruined whole thousands of years of aesthetic for me. And you can tell that BRZRKR is set in that kind of time period, so I got a little apprehensive. But Rebekah Isaacs and the colorist really save this. They make the colors pop, they make them feel textured. You're not just looking at a bunch of people in brown robes. Like, it's actually interesting to look at. There's style to it. Not to mention the composition of the panels is just way better than the Action Bible was. Like, way better. I've got this pet peeve about gladiator stories where the guy in charge gives him a thumbs down, and that's supposed to mean, I don't like him, kill him. But historically, that's not what that meant. To give him a thumbs up means send him to his gods, right? So a thumbs down doesn't mean anything historically. Thumbs up means kill him. No thumb means spare him. It's your pet peeve. It's just a pet peeve is all. You see this all the time and I'm sick of it. Anyway, that's just a pet peeve. And then Keanu Reeves does the thing that his character does and everybody's like, whoa, he can do that! And we're like, yeah, he can do that. We've seen him do that before. And then while they've got this main character, BRZRKR, chained up in the dungeon, we get this page where the queen is about to free him. And check this out. 16 panels on this page. 16 panels! That is a lot of panels for one page. But it doesn't feel busy. The emotion on their faces is so obvious, you can feel what's happening in the scene, and because it's broken up into so many tiny moments, you feel like a lot of time is passing and you're sitting with this situation for a long time. So when you turn the page, and you get this gorgeous double spread, it just feels so natural and it feels so cinematic. You feel like you were there, and then you can feel the wind whipping through your hair as they ride off on this camel, which I don't actually know how fast a camel goes, but you imagine wind. You imagine the triumphant orchestra swelling behind them as they leave the city in the distance. Oh, this camel is definitely walking. That camel's not zooming. The fact that they put 16 panels on a page and it still felt natural is mind-blowing. Gorgeous. You can really tell that these people love comics by the way they treated this section. And then we get this other super cool panel a couple pages later where Berserker has just annihilated a bunch of soldiers again, because that's what he does. He just takes out tons and tons of people. He's just a machine. And then it shows this like infrared panel where you can see the heat signatures, sort of, or maybe just signs of life, and he's the only one glowing in the middle there, and there's all these guys that he just killed around him. And it makes you feel as if you're seeing through this semi-omniscient viewpoint of the creature that dwells within this guy. It's like you can see its hypersensitivity to threats of danger, so its perspective is just wider, and it can lock onto anything that might be a threat. You feel like you're seeing through his eyes, but they're not through his eyes, they're through this larger perspective, and it just makes it seem so much scarier. Another great panel. How did they think of that? And listen, I have read a lot of comics, especially lately, about big tough guys who don't take nothing from nobody, and they're out there living on their own, which is how they like it, just them and their beer and their dog, and they don't want to talk to nobody, but then they get called back in because some old evil has resurfaced, and now they gotta come out there and be tough and beat up some guys. And Berserker is kind of like that, where he's just some really super tough guy, and he's just reluctantly being called back into action again and again and again. But he's actually believable. This guy is actually reluctant to do it. He's not just like, gosh, I guess I'll just go put on my super suit that I've been dusting for the past 10 years because I knew I was going to put it on eventually, but I didn't want to say so. When Berserker talks, you take him seriously because he's very soft-spoken, but every single threat he makes, you know he can back up. It's like he doesn't even see a point in making a threat anymore because he knows he's going to do what he's going to do one way or another. And that's the kind of tough guy that I can believe in. Oh man, and speaking of him only speaking when it matters, when he finds out that he was betrayed by the character he loves, and then she's like, I did it for my people, and he just replies, what people? Woo-hoo! They're screwed! You know immediately that those people are screwed! And then boom! Immediate gratification, they are indeed screwed. This comic is awesome. The setup and delivery is so consistent and so satisfying. And then we come back to these super cool monks that were introduced in the beginning, and you're really curious about what they're doing, and their aesthetic is awesome and solid. And then Berserker shows up and you're like, oh shit! And like I said, this is a self-contained one-shot. So all you need for this story is this issue. And the ending of this issue is so satisfying. This is a beautifully crafted, self-contained story. It's easily the best Berserker story I've read so far. And there have been, I think, 13 Berserker issues so far. This is the best one. I really can't recommend this enough. You should have this in your collection if you like anything Keanu Reeves, if you like John Wick, if you like Gladiator, if you like anything related to any of those things. You will most likely love this comic. And when I started reading this, I didn't think that I was going to give it this rating, but honestly, this is a 10 out of 10. Not only does it meet all my expectations, but it exceeds them, and it furthers the medium. I'm not super prone to hyper-violent storylines. I didn't like the 90s comics very much. I don't need to see a ton of bloodshed in my comics to enjoy them, but this is a great comic. So my rating is 10 out of 10. What do you think? Today's question comes from Ryan Aridi, and he says, I love Wolverine, but I don't know where to start. What comic should I start with? Well, I think that Wolverine by Chris Claremont and Frank Miller is the best Wolverine story ever. Which is funny, because it was the first solo Wolverine story ever. But Wolverine Evolution by Jeff Loeb and Simone Bianchi is the comic that got me hooked in the character when I was really young. The art is just gorgeous. It's a very specific style that really fits these characters and the events that are happening in these issues. Oh, look at that. It's another thumbs down, meaning kill the guy in a Gladiator context. Anyway, if you want to see Wolverine doing what he does best, this is a great place to start. It's also really modern, it's fresh, really fun to look at, really easy to read, so I would probably start here if I were you. But if you want to see his roots and see how good he can really be as a character, this is the best one.